I woke up at 3:12 a.m., not from a nightmare, but because a familiar voice leaked through the thin wall, the voice of Marcus, the son I once believed would never hurt me. 479. Each digit of my bank card was being read to Kayla, his wife, in a whisper I had never heard in my home before, small and cold. I lay still in the dark, listening to my heart crack little by little. For 40 years of work, I've stitched torn seams and patched dreams just to keep a little peace for old age. And now, the very son I raised with these hands was learning how to pick his mother's pocket. I didn't turn on the light. I just smiled a little and set my hand on the backup phone under my pillow. They think I'm asleep, but in just 50 minutes, I'll make them wake up in their own nightmare. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. I'm Donna Whitmore, 67, a widow for 12 years, living alone in a small house in Springfield, Missouri. People say loneliness is the biggest test of old age, but I've always thought loneliness isn't as frightening as being betrayed by the very person you brought into the world. I'm not rich. I'm just a retired seamstress who spent 42 years beside an industrial sewing machine in a uniform factory. My back is bent, my hands are calloused, and my eyes have long since weakened. But every stitch and every button I attached was one more step towards saving, so I could have a little freedom at the end of life. Not thanks to anyone, not begging anyone, and certainly not for anyone to touch the sweat I earned. When my husband Walter died of heart disease, Marcus was only 27. At the funeral, he held my hand and said, "I won't let you be alone, Mom. I'll be here to take care of you." I believed him. God, I believed him. But that promise didn't last even 4 years. Marcus started borrowing first $500, then $1,000, then $3,000. At first, he said it was to invest in truck driving school, then to start a shop for equipment. Every time I asked about paying me back, he'd say, "You know I'm trying. Don't pressure me." I didn't want to embarrass my son. I quietly wrote the amounts in a small red notebook kept in the bottom drawer of my sewing table where no one ever looks. Then Kayla appeared. A pretty girl, smooth talker, always calling me Mom, with a voice sweeter than sugar melting into coffee. I wanted to believe she was sincere, but something in Kayla's eyes always chilled me, the look of someone who knows exactly what she wants and how to get it. At first, they were happy and seldom visited. I didn't mind. I understood my son had his own family. But after they bought a new house, everything changed. They came more often each time with a different reason. Once, Marcus brought an apple pie and said, "Mom, Kayla worries about you. You should let us help manage your money. You wouldn't have to worry, just sign a few papers." I forced a smile and asked lightly, "Manage it? And you two, who's managing you?" He gave a stiff laugh and looked away. I noted that day in my book, Marcus suggested co-managing the account. From then on, I chose to observe instead of speak. I listened to how Kayla talked and wrote down the odd questions. "Mom, which bank do you use? Do you have the online app?" I answered gently, but I knew in my heart they were mapping the path. Every night before bed, I sat at the old sewing table where Walter once fixed the desk lamp with electrical tape and made a plan. I called it my backup plan ABC. A. Change the PIN and secure the phone. B. Separate email for the bank. Create a private account no one knows. C. Set ATM withdrawal limits and turn on one-time codes for each transaction. I went to the Springfield Credit Union branch and met with teller Maya Patel, the kind Indian-American woman who helped me last year when my card glitched. "Maya, I need to overhaul all my security," I said, low but firm. She looked surprised. "Did you lose your card?" "Not yet, but someone's about to lose it for me." We set everything up together. I asked her to add a note in my file, "Flag, do not release info without owner ID." Before I left the counter, Maya lowered her voice and said, "I've seen a lot of cases where kids trick their parents. You're doing the right thing." I only nodded. Her words were both comforting and painful. Back home, I opened the safe and split the money into 2 parts. Account A, leave only $5,000, just enough for them to see and get excited about. Account B, transfer the entire $79,800. No card issued, only a hard passbook and digital code. I hid the passbook where no one would ever think to look inside the stuffing of a throw pillow I sewed myself. If anyone saw it, they'd think it was just an old lady's dated decor. Next, I called the bank and asked to stop paper statements. months, everything would go to a new email address that only I knew. I created it with a name no one would guess, Midnight Gardener 74 like a tiny alias in everyday life. In the kitchen, I prepared another prop, the display wallet. Inside, I put the old, canceled card, a few old bills, a couple of $20 notes, and a sloppy sticky note that said, Pin 0415 Walter's birthday. I wanted to see how smart Marcus would be when he stepped into the simplest trap of my life. When everything was ready, I brewed jasmine tea and sat at the dining table where so many family dinners once echoed with laughter. The warm light reflected on the cup, and I saw my face, older, lined, but with eyes brighter than ever. I thought of the days when I was young and Walter was still alive. He used to say, "Donna, if the day comes when someone treats your kindness like an entitlement, stop." I hadn't stopped early. Enough with Marcus, but I would stop now. That night, after I made sure the phone was fully charged and the alert system was active, I went to my room and turned the lock softly. I heard Marcus and Kayla chatting in the living room, ordinary sounds that now scraped like metal. "Sleep well, Mom," Kayla called out. I answered, "Sleep well, you two." Then I turned off the light and lay down. Outside, the wall clock ticked each second like the heartbeat of the house. Every tick was a memory when Marcus started preschool, when he fell off his bike, when he drove me to church on Mother's Day. It's all still there, but my heart no longer trusts that boy. I cracked open my nightstand drawer for one last check. Real wallet, locked inside the safe. Fake wallet, placed in the top drawer, easy to see. Backup phone, on silent, ready to receive bank SMS alerts for any transaction. Everything was set like a chessboard. Before closing my eyes, I wrote a few lines in the planned. Brown leather journal, June 14th. Marcus and Kayla are getting ready to steal my money. I'm not afraid. I'm sad. But I've learned what Walter used to teach. Kindness doesn't have to be foolish. Tomorrow at sunrise, I'll teach my child a lesson no school could ever teach about limits. I shut the book, laid my hand on my chest, and listened to my steady breath. Outside, the night wind slipped through the window, cool and quiet. Only 50 minutes to go, I thought, and it will begin. Not revenge, but an awakening for them and for me. The next morning, Marcus came earlier than usual, before the sun could reach the kitchen window. He carried a bag of pastries from the shop I used to like, and 2 cups of black coffee. I was folding laundry when I heard him call, "Mom, we came to visit." He grinned wide, but there was no light in his eyes. I wiped my hands on my apron and kept my voice gentle. "Rare to see you at this hour." Marcus set the bag on the table and pulled out a chair. "Mom, Kayla and I talked. You're alone, and we worry. I just think, if you let us manage a bit of your finances, you'd have more peace of mind." I looked at my son freshly shaved, wrinkled shirt, a coffee stain on the collar. He tried to sound sincere, but I could hear the hesitation in every word, like a man playing a role he didn't believe. I answered evenly, "Thanks, I'm fine. Nothing for me to worry about." He smiled, shrugged, and took a sip of coffee. "Mom, we just want to help. I read about seniors getting tricked by banks or making bad investments. Your money should be in our hands. We're younger, we understand the times better." I looked at him long enough that he had to look away. It was the same invest for seniors refrain I hear on TV every morning. I smiled. "Maybe so, but I like handling my own things. If I get stuck, I'll ask you." Marcus nodded, trying to act relaxed, but his shoulders were stiff. He stayed another 15 minutes, chatted about the weather, then left. When the sound of the car faded, I sat at the table, opened my little notebook, and wrote down every detail. Tuesday, 9:40 a.m. Marcus brought pastries, coffee, pushed to manage finances, tone polite but pressuring, avoided eye contact when questioned. I closed the notebook and put it in the sewing table drawer next to the wooden ruler Walter once carved my name into. 2 days later, Kayla came alone. That was unusual. She usually came with her husband, as if Marcus were a shield. As soon as the door opened, I saw Kayla with a bright smile and a tray of carefully wrapped cookies with a gold bow. "Mom, I've missed you. I have something to talk about today." I invited her in and made tea. She sat on the couch, set the tray down, and pulled a printed packet from her purse with pale blue borders. "Mom, this is just a temporary power of attorney, only for emergencies when you need someone to deal with the bank or transfer money. Nothing serious." I didn't look at the papers right away. I looked at her face, the flawless makeup, bright brown eyes, and the hand with pale pink polish nudging the papers toward me. I asked softly, "Where did you get these?" "My friend works at a law office just a template. I pretended to fumble and put on my glasses. Let me read carefully. I'm old. I read slow. Of course. Take your time. She smiled, but I caught a flicker of impatience. I picked up my phone and said, "Why don't you chat with Marcus a second? I'll grab my magnifier. I can't see the small print." I went to my room, shut the door, opened the camera, and snapped quick photos of every page. Then I returned, put the packet back exactly where it had been, and smiled. "I'll read it carefully and sign later." Her smile tightened. "Of course. No rush." She stayed a few more minutes, small talk and compliments about the tea, then left. I stood at the door watching her silver car disappear at the end of the street. As soon as it was gone, I went back inside, opened my phone, and zoomed in on each page. There it was in bold: authorization to access and manage financial accounts. Below was a signature line with my name already typed in a fake script font. I exhaled slowly. Not anger, but a slow cold creeping in like winter wind through a window frame. That night, as I turned off the light, my phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Alvarez, my next-door neighbor, popped up. "Donna, I just saw Marcus and Kayla around your place at 11. Looked like they were searching for something in the yard." I sat up and pulled back the curtain just as she said. The mailbox was ajar. The streetlight threw shadows over shoe prints pressed into the wet grass. I slipped on a coat and went outside. Inside the mailbox, the flyers were disturbed, and the bank envelope was gone. I wasn't scared, just sad. Marcus has a house key, and still, he chose to sneak. The next morning, I went to the post office, filled out the change of address form, and redirected all bank mail to the home of my old friend Paula Nguyen on the east side of Springfield. Paula is someone I can trust, a widow, quiet, hates lies. When I asked, she just nodded. "I'll take it. I know you're doing the right thing." From then on, I recorded everything carefully like a new habit: dates, times, actions, words. I photographed the shoe prints on the porch. I kept Mrs. Alvarez's texts. I saved a copy of the power of attorney forms Kayla brought and put them on a small USB tucked inside an old sewing tin. No one knew how prepared I was, and I didn't need them to. I bought another old phone just to receive bank alert texts. I kept my main phone quiet, so if anyone snooped, they'd find nothing but a few shopping messages and pictures of the neighbor's cat. Each night I sat at the sewing table, warm yellow light on my little notebook. I wrote short lines just enough to remind myself not to soften. No one deserves blind trust just because they call you mom. Family is not a blank check for someone else to sign at will. One rainy afternoon, I took out my old will. The ink had faded, the paper was slightly yellow. In it, I left most of my assets to Marcus, with the line, "Because you have always loved and cared for your mother." I sat with it for a long time, staring at those words as if looking at a stranger. I picked up a pen and added a new clause at the end. If anyone attempts to coerce, threaten, or impersonate me to control my assets, that person will be removed from inheritance. I finished writing, blew gently to dry the ink, and signed my name. No shaky hands, no second guessing. That night, with rain tapping the roof, I sat with a hot cup of tea and remembered the younger years. Marcus used to be a sweet boy, generous with friends, clinging to me when thunder scared him. I once believed a child, afraid of thunder, would never hurt his mother. But I forgot. Long silences can create room for darkness to grow. I looked around the kitchen, the sewing machine, the curtain I'd just sewn, the little vase by the window. Everything was simple but orderly, like my life. Not fancy, but mine. I reminded myself, don't sign out of guilt. Don't give in just to keep the peace. If family requires fear as the price, it isn't family anymore. When the clock struck 9, I turned off the lights, shut the door, and checked the locks one last time. Everything was secure, but I knew in my heart the real wind hadn't started. And I was ready not to attack, but to protect the rest of my life. I had just finished brewing a pot of jasmine tea when a rapid knocking hit the door. I knew that rhythm instantly. Only Marcus knocks like that, fast and hard, like someone who always forces an answer. Before I could get there, the lock turned and he walked in. "Mom, I need to talk." I nodded slightly and set the teapot on the table. He stood in the middle of the room, hands in pockets, eyes bloodshot. "I need to borrow $3,200. Just 2 weeks, Mom, I swear." I didn't answer right away. I poured tea and nudged a cup toward him. "Sit." Marcus sat but didn't touch the tea. His breath was quick. A hint of cigarette clung to his shirt. I asked, "What for?" "I need to pay someone back. I guaranteed a friend's debt. He was lying, and we both knew it. I spoke slowly, soft but clear. No, I'm not lending anymore. Marcus froze, as if I'd said the unthinkable. What did you say? I said no. This time, no. A silence stretched tight as wire. I heard the clock tap out beats between two heavy breaths. You know I'll pay you back. 2 weeks. Marcus, last time you said 1 week. Before that, 10 days. I wrote them all down. I opened the red notebook and flipped a few pages. February 12th, $1,500. March 3rd, $800. April, $2,000. June, $1,200. And last August, $2,500. I closed the book gently. You called each of those the last time. Is today the last time too? Or just one more time among many? He stared at me, lips pressed, then gave a harsh laugh. You really count every penny, huh? I'm your son, not a stranger. I took a slow breath. Because you're my son. I don't want you to keep lying to yourself. Lying about what? I just need help. His voice rose. His hand slammed the table. You're selfish. You're old. What do you need money for? To take it to the grave? That line was colder than January wind. I've heard cruel words in life, but I never thought I'd hear them from my own son. It felt like someone sucked the air out of the room. I didn't shout or react. I took a sip of tea and said quietly, I'm not keeping money to take it with. Hear me, son. I'm keeping it so no one has to pay the price for my kindness anymore. He jumped up. The chair tipped, his voice shaking with anger. You and your morals acting so righteous. You never understand what I'm dealing with. I looked at him, the 39-year-old man who used to be my pride, now yelling at his mother like a child who lost a toy. I do understand, but understanding doesn't mean enabling. He stood silent for a few seconds, then spun around and yanked the door open. It slammed so hard, the windows rattled. A sparrow on the porch startled and flitted up, leaving a small haze of dust in the noon light. I stood looking at the closed door. No tears, no fear. Just the feeling of another crack opening a little deeper inside me. I poured more tea, sat down, and turned to my planning notebook again. The last page of Plan A had been crossed out. I wrote a new line, careful and neat. Plan B begin. First, I picked up my phone and backed up. Everything. Photos of the power of attorney forms Kayla brought, Marcus's texts, the shoe print photos, and my journal notes. I gathered them onto a small owl-shaped USB Walter's old birthday gift. I knew exactly what I would do with it. That afternoon, I drove to my most trusted friend, Paula Nguyen. She opened the door when she saw me on the porch, gray hair tied back. Donna, why do you look so serious? I need you to keep this. Don't open it. Don't ask. She looked at me for a moment, then nodded. Okay. Neither of us said anything else. Long friendships don't always need words. I left her house at sunset. I felt lighter, as if I had finally tucked a secret into the right safe place. Back home, I opened my laptop and made an emergency contact list. On paper, I wrote clearly, 1. Bank, Maya Patel Springfield Credit Union. 2. Attorney, Ethan Morales and Fields. 3. Doctor, Leonard Price Street Mary's Hospital. 4. Local police officer, Officer Daniels, Springfield West Precinct. I noted business hours, direct numbers, and printed 2 copies. One went in the sewing table drawer, the other with the passbook. As I wrote, an odd calm settled over me. Maybe when you're prepared, fear gets smaller. That evening, I stepped onto the porch to check the doorbell camera. The lens was a little dusty. I wiped it clean, opened the app, and saw the auto storage period was 30 days. I extended it to 60, set a new password, then replayed last night's footage. The image was clear, Kayla standing by the gate, looking around, while Marcus bent over the mailbox. They had no idea there was a camera. I saved that clip to my computer and named it 11 p.m. proof. Sometimes justice doesn't need a courtroom, just the right evidence at the right time. After that, I opened the new safe. Inside were bank documents, my passport, the will, and a small pouch holding Walter's wedding band. I locked it, then tucked the key into my bantabee and robe pocket, the last place anyone would think to check. The old safe was different. I left it empty except for a few unimportant papers and some old photos. From now on, it would play the role of a prop, a perfect decoy for anyone too nosy. Night fell. The house was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking and the wind threading through the doorframe. I sat under the warm lamplight and breathed 4 counts in, 7 counts hold, 8 counts out. The 4-7-8 breathing Dr. Price taught me when I couldn't sleep after Walter died. Each breath brought me back to the present, to the stillness of a heart that has weathered too many storms. I told myself, don't let anger steer you. Don't let tears blur your memory. I don't want to become a bitter mother. I want to be a woman clear-eyed enough to know when to stop. When the clock struck 11, I stepped onto the porch and watched the streetlights glaze the empty road. A few cars drifted by, then faded. I remembered Marcus as a boy riding his bike around this block, laughing. He's grown now, but greed has made him small. I didn't know where he was, what he was doing, or whether he felt any shame. I only knew that today I chose to keep the last of my self-respect. I went inside, locked the door, and set the deadbolt. On the table, the tea had gone cold, but the scent lingered. I smiled faintly at my wedding photo with Walter. I kept my promise, Walter. I won't let anyone touch what we built with sweat and love. Then I turned off the light. The house sank into silence, with only the wind on the porch. Tomorrow, Marcus might come back, but next time I won't need to say no, because now every answer is already in my plan. 3 days after the argument, just when it seemed things had calmed down, my landline rang close to noon. A polite but unfamiliar male voice was on the other end. Hello, is this Mrs. Donna Whitmore? Yes, this is Matthew Cole from the depths of Wide, law firm Bright & Cole. We represent your son, Mr. Marcus Whitmore. He intends to file a petition for the court to appoint a guardian over your assets due to concerns that you are no longer competent to manage them yourself. I went silent. It took a few seconds for the words to settle. What did you say? His voice stayed soft but cold. You may want to contact your attorney. We'll mail a notice for a competency evaluation this week. I set the receiver down, my heart hammering. Not from fear, but from shock. The son who once kissed my forehead for every A in grade school now wanted to declare that his mother lacked capacity. I stood still for a long moment, then took a deep breath. I knew I had to move quickly. That afternoon, I called Paula. Paula, do you remember that young attorney you introduced me to years ago? Ethan something? Ethan Morales. What's going on, Donna? I need to see him. Now. 2 hours later, I was in Ethan Morales's small, downtown office. The space was bright, bookshelves packed with files, and a Harvard Law diploma hung behind him. Ethan, about 40, neat and calm, had intelligent eyes. Just tell me everything exactly as it happened. I told the whole story from Marcus borrowing money, to Kayla bringing the power of attorney forms, to this morning's call. Ethan listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back, thoughtful. They're trying to take control of your assets by proving you're not competent. I gave a dry laugh. They want to make me the confused one. That's right, but we can block them. He opened his notebook and spoke clearly. You need a comprehensive cognitive evaluation, a full panel. You go on your own, sign yourself in, and get an independent certification. Once we have strong results, we'll prepare a response file and send a legal notice directly to Bright & Cole. We do it before they file. I nodded. I'll do it first thing, tomorrow. The next morning, I went to Street Mary's and met Dr. Leonard Price, who's managed my health for years. Tall, silver-haired, steady voice. When I told him everything, he just sighed. Mrs. Donna, I know you're not confused, but we'll follow the protocol so they can't exploit anything. He ran me through a battery of tests, repeating number strings forward and backward, recognizing images, writing my name backward, drawing a clock, doing quick calculations, answering questions about time and place. I completed them all and even joked, "Doctor, I'm doing these faster than my grandkids." He smiled. I believe you, but for the paperwork, we need the proof. 3 days later, I received the report. Cognitive performance. Excellent. No sign of cognitive decline. At the bottom were Dr. Leonard Price's signature and a red seal. I brought the file to Ethan's office. He read carefully, then smiled. Perfect. Now they can't touch you. That afternoon, we scanned the entire file and emailed it to Maya Patel at the bank. She replied immediately, received. I'll attach this to your customer profile and mark the account to block any new authorization requests without your confirmation or your attorney's. I sat at the computer and felt something ease inside me. Some young people still understand respect. Ethan looked at me. You should keep gathering evidence, save any threatening texts or coercive calls. In Missouri, recording Reporting for your own protection is legal as long as you're part of the conversation. I nodded. I already keep a detailed journal. Now I'll add audio. He added, we'll draft a cease and desist letter. It will state that any legal contact must go through me. I asked, send it to whom? To Bright & Cole. Once they receive it, they're obligated to stop contacting you directly. If they don't, it's an ethics issue. I smiled. You're making me feel like I'm in a movie. No, ma'am. This is the law, and when you know how to use it, it's the best shield you have. 2 days later, the cease and desist went out. I received a copy with the bold heading, all further correspondence must go through Attorney Morales. Holding that paper, I didn't feel proud, just a slow ache. If we've come to this point, then between me and my son, the only thread left is legal paperwork. That night, I went into the yard and staked in 2 new signs Ethan brought. No trespassing. Private property. Right below, in smaller print. Security cameras. On 24/7. I pushed them deep into the soil, then looked at the front lawn, the place where Marcus once played Little League catch, where I used to cheer. Now it was the boundary between peace and intrusion. I sent a short notice to the neighborhood association. Please note, I do not permit anyone to approach my home outside reasonable hours. If you see anything unusual, please notify the police or call me. Mr. Reed, the chair, called back. Mrs. Donna, we understand. We'll keep an eye out. His voice warmed me. Not everyone turns away when you need help. That night, I sat at my desk and opened the worn brown journal. Warm lamplight brushed the frayed corners of the pages. I wrote a letter to myself, small and plain, a way to hold on to the softer part of me. Donna, remember, pity doesn't make others better. It only erodes your self-respect. When a child goes astray, the mistake isn't that you stopped giving, it's that you gave for too long. Stand firm, even if your hands shake. I folded it and tucked it into the little compartment where I used to keep Walter's letters. The next morning, I drove to the bank. Maya greeted me with her familiar smile. What can I do for you today? I want to block all paper statements, switch everything to electronic, permanently. She entered the request and confirmed, from now on, no one can access the account or change the mailing address without you present or a document from Attorney Morales. I thanked her, signed, and stepped outside. The sun was mild that day. Maple leaves speckled the brick walkway. I looked up at the bank sign flashing in the light and felt a quiet steadiness. Back home, I paused at the gate and looked at the 2 no trespassing signs swaying in the breeze. Everything looked the same, but something in me had shifted. I was no longer the mother bowing her head for her child to understand. I was a woman using her good sense to protect herself. I went inside, turned on the kettle, poured a cup, and sat by the window. Sunlight slipped through the curtain and drew thin bands across my hands. I thought of Marcus, the son I once believed would be the blanket against the wind at the end of life. Now he was the storm I had to build a wall against. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. I didn't pray for his remorse. I prayed for my composure, because I know that when the law can't make them ashamed, only conscience will. That night, Springfield was so cold it felt like the wind itself held its breath against the window frame. I lay still in the dark, listening to the clock tick each beat as clear as the breath of this old house. It was near midnight. I didn't sleep. I simply kept my breath steady, light and deep, as if I were truly asleep. From downstairs came light, broken footsteps. Someone else might blame an old house in the wind, but I knew better. I've lived here more than 40 years. Every sound is as familiar as my own pulse. It wasn't the wind, it was Marcus. I heard the fridge door open softly, then close. Footsteps moved up the stairs, slow, careful, but not quiet enough for ears trained by silence. I gripped the edge of the blanket, kept my breathing even, eyes half closed. The door gave a faint creak. The hallway light drew a thin streak across the floor. Marcus's shadow stretched tall and black on the wall, trembling. He stood there a few seconds, as if to be sure I was asleep. Then he stepped to the vanity, scraped the drawer, slid open. I didn't need to look to know he was after the wallet. The fake one I'd placed in the easiest spot, second drawer holding the canceled card and a note that said pin 0415, which I had deliberately scribbled in blue ink. I heard the card brush his phone, then a tiny click-click. He was photographing the front. I could picture the cold blue light on the screen flickering across his tense cheekbone. "Hurry up, let's go." Kayla's whisper leaked from the doorway. "Wait, almost done." Cold sweat traced my spine, not from fear but from bitterness. Never did I think my own son would stand in his mother's house like like a thief in the dark. Marcus shut the drawer and stepped out as quietly as he could. The bedroom door eased closed. Footsteps faded, the front door clicked, and then a car engine turned over on the street. I opened my eyes. The clock read 3:12 a.m. I sat up, pulled on my robe, and went to the kitchen. My hands didn't shake, they were just a little cold. I made hot cocoa, breathed in the bitter chocolate and vanilla, and let myself settle. In the quiet kitchen, the little lamp threw warm light across the table once home to cozy breakfasts, now only the spoon's tap against a ceramic cup. When the phone buzzed, I looked at the screen. A bank alert. Transaction failed. PIN entered incorrectly 3 times at ATM #417318 a.m. I smiled. Not a triumphant smile, but the smile of the last sober person in a play. Have you ever had to smile through that kind of pain? That moment you realize love isn't enough to save someone, and the only thing left is to stay calm and protect yourself. If you've been there, tell me in the comments not to complain, but so we remember we're not alone. I opened my laptop and logged into the backup email. In the inbox, I quickly drafted a message to Maya Patel, just as we had agreed. Maya, please activate the alert flag. Someone is trying to access using the old card. Confirm invalid. Donna. A minute later, she replied, all transactions flagged. The system will capture ATM video and retain a security report. Rest assured, your account is safe. I took another sip of cocoa. Outside, night wind hissed through the bare maples, like the house itself was sighing. I went upstairs and slid the interior bolt. The whole house seemed to hold its breath. I placed the backup phone by my pillow, the screen dimly lit with security on. Any activity tied to my accounts would ping immediately. I sat on the bed's edge and looked at Frank's photo, my husband gone more than a decade now. In it, he's smiling, arm around me at a picnic in Wilson's Creek Park. His eyes are gentle, deep, full of peace. I whispered as if he were beside me. It's time, Frank. I tried to hold on, but our son chose another road. Today I'm not holding on out of fear of losing. I'm holding on because I know what's worthy. Light glanced off the glass, making his smile brighten in an odd way, as if he agreed. I opened my brown leather journal and wrote slowly, my familiar hand, July 21st, 3:45 a.m. Marcus took the prop card. Kayla waited at the door, photographed, tried to withdraw, failed. The crows fell into the trap. I'm not angry, only sad that these hands once held that child, and now they write these lines. I closed the book, set the pen on top, and leaned back. The room was still only the clock, and my heart beat in unison. Around 4 o'clock, the phone buzzed again. A confirmation. ATM attempt logged. Card disabled permanently. I looked at the words and felt lighter, as if a stone I'd carried for years had finally slid off. Outside the window, dawn began. Springfield's sky washed pale blue. Fog slipped along the wooden porch rail. The first birds called from the backyard branches so clear I almost cried. I stood and cracked the curtain. Early light touched Frank's frame, and his eyes seemed to smile. I smiled back and murmured, we taught our son about honesty. How he chooses to live now isn't in our hands anymore. I poured another cup of coffee and sat by the window, watching the first rim of sunrise. The strong scent filled the room. I took my notebook and wrote one last line for the night. When I stay clear, others show their face. When I'm quiet, the truth speaks. Tonight I saw what every mother fears, yet what makes me stronger. Love can't save someone who won't change. I folded the notebook, set it beside the steaming cup, and drew a long breath. My whole body seemed to melt into the morning light, while my mind stayed still as a mirror. No more fear, no more guilt. Only one thing remained: clarity. I knew that by the time the sun was up, Marcus and Kayla would realize every door had closed. And this was only the beginning. The next morning, with the first sunlight slipping through the curtain, I was already up. The Springfield sky was so clear it felt like nothing dark had ever happened. I sat by the window, coffee steaming, pen in hand. 6:45 a.m. The machine swallowed the card. They don't know the game is over. 10 minutes later, the phone exploded with a call. Marcus. I let it ring twice and picked up on the third. His voice tore out, hoarse with rage. Mom, the account says it's closed. The damn machine ate the card. What did you do? I sipped my coffee and kept my tone even. Nothing unusual, Marcus. That card was deactivated last month. Deactivated? Why would you do that without telling me? Because it's my card, and you took it without asking. Silence for a few seconds. I heard Kayla sobbing, then breaking in her voice, shaky but theatrical. Mrs. Donna, please, we're about to lose the house they've posted the notice. Please, just 5,000 and we'll pay it back. I closed my eyes and breathed. Part of me, the mother, wanted to soften, but the part of me that had been used too many times spoke first. Kayla, if you two hadn't crept into my room at 3 a.m. yesterday, maybe I would have considered helping, but not now. I don't fund criminal behavior. Love doesn't come with theft. Marcus's voice cracked, a hiss under it. You don't understand. They'll take everything. I have nothing left, I answered slowly. You still have your conscience if you choose to keep it, but I have no duty to save you from the fallout of your own actions. Then I hung up. My hands trembled, but not from fear. It was relief. The hands that once shook from hurt were shaking now because they had cut the cord binding family to wrongdoing. I set the phone on the table and stood in the quiet, the clock tapping steadily like a heartbeat returning after a storm. As I rose, the phone buzzed again. A bank text. Unauthorized inquiry declined. ATM #417, 7:05 a.m. A simple line, but for me, a period at the end of the sentence. I nodded slightly and wrote in my notebook, 7:05 a.m., game over. Nothing is more precious than clarity. I called attorney Ethan Morales right away. He answered after 2 rings. Good morning, Mrs. Donna. I'm guessing last night happened? It did. Marcus and Kayla took the old card. They tried to withdraw. The machine ate it. The bank confirmed. Good. Are you able to stay calm? Calmer than ever. He chuckled softly over the phone. I'll add this to the record. Are you still keeping a journal? Still regularly. Good. I recommend you write a summary right now, date, time, words spoken, details. And to be safe, I'll prepare a second legal warning. Cease and desist. It will force Marcus to stop all contact or threats. If they continue, we'll have grounds to seek a protective order. I felt both sad and relieved. I never thought there'd be a day my son would receive a legal warning from his own mother. Don't think of it that way. This isn't war, it's self-defense. After the call, I made a pot of jasmine tea. The gentle scent drifted through the kitchen, soothing what had just broken. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and listened to my own breathing. No more footsteps, no more demanding voices, just the quiet I'd traded my trust to reclaim. I sat at the table and wrote a quick report to Ethan, full account of the events. Every line I wrote felt like a wound finally closing. 3:12 a.m. heard movement. 3:18 attempted withdrawal with the card. 7:05 phone call. Marcus confirmed the behavior. I responded firmly, without provocation. Contact ended. After sending the email, I leaned back. Morning light slipped through the curtains, laying gold bands across the wood floor. For the first time in weeks, the house felt like it truly belonged to me. Around 9 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I answered, and the mail carrier stood there with a large envelope. For Mrs. Donna Whitmore from Morales and Fields. I thanked him, signed, and opened it. Inside was the hard copy of the second legal warning. Effective today, any contact, threats, or attempts to access the property of Mrs. Donna Whitmore will be considered harassment and invasion of privacy and may be prosecuted under Missouri Statute 565.09. I read every word, then folded it carefully and put it in the file cabinet. Paperwork, the last tool an honest woman can use when trust has been broken. Around 10, the phone buzzed again. I didn't need to look to know who it was. I let it ring until it stopped. I had said everything that needed saying. There was no reason to hear more excuses, staged tears, or threats wrapped in pleading. Instead, I opened my laptop and logged into the bank. Inbox. Maya had sent a detailed report with ATM camera stills. A man hunched over the machine, stocky, wearing a knit cap, but no matter how hard he tried to hide, I knew the slope of Marcus's shoulders. I didn't save the images. I glanced for a few seconds and deleted them. There was no need to keep evidence of pain. The law had enough. What I needed was to start letting go. I walked into the living room. Noon light cut through the glass and flashed across the family photo on the wall. Christmas 2015, when Frank was still alive and Marcus still smiled for real. In the frame, I was seated by the tree. Marcus had his arm around Kayla, holding a wine glass, his face carrying a happiness I now recognize as false. I took the frame down, wiped the dust from the back, and gently separated the photo. I kept the part with Frank and me, trimmed it neatly, and placed it in a smaller frame, set it on my desk. The rest, Marcus and Kayla, I folded and put in the bottom drawer. I didn't throw it away. I put it away. Sometimes the hardest part isn't losing. It's having to look every day at what's broken. I hung the new frame, now just the two of us, Frank and me. The room seemed brighter, as if the light could finally touch the wall again after years dimmed by pretense. I poured more tea and sat in the wooden chair Frank built by hand. Outside, wind moved through the maples and dry leaves spun. I thought about the 12 years since he died. Each year brought a different loss, but this year was the biggest. I lost my child, but I won myself back. The phone buzzed again, a text from Ethan. The formal warning has been sent to Marcus and Kayla. If they continue contacting you, I'll move for a restraining order. Please rest. I replied. Thank you, Ethan. I'm okay. I just need a quiet morning. I set the phone down, leaned back, and breathed in. The jasmine scent still lingered. For the first time in months, there were no rings, no footsteps, no dread, only wind and peace. The kind of peace I thought I'd never get back. I spoke softly, almost a breath. Frank, I finally did it. I kept the house, kept my self-respect, and kept the peace you told me to guard. Marcus will have to learn his own lesson. As for me, I just want to live the rest of my life in quiet. Afternoon sun slid through the window and lit the newly hung photo, just me and Frank. Two quiet smiles in the room, like a promise that every storm passes if you're brave enough to stand still. Saturday, near noon. Springfield blazed with heat, oddly calm. I was arranging flowers in a glass vase, a small ritual that settles me each weekend when pounding hit the door. Open up, I knew Marcus's voice. Then Kayla's followed, shrill, tight with anger. We know you're in there. I set the vase down and took a long breath. I didn't rush. I walked over and stood exactly 3 feet from the door, right under the doorbell camera. I hit record. A small red light came on. I cracked the door just enough to let light spill out and said evenly, whatever you have to say it here. The camera is recording. Marcus lunged, then froze when he saw the blinking red light. His face flushed. He growled, What are you doing recording me? This is the family's house. You can't just ban me from coming in. I looked him in the eye, unflinching. Wrong, Marcus. This is my house. I built this property with my own hands and my own money, every brick, every dollar. There's no right born from greed, Kayla cut in, hands shaking, voice hiccuping. Mom, we didn't want it to come to this, but you've left us no way to live. Your money is our money. Why else did you raise your son if not to give him a better life? I smiled faintly, a smile holding a lifetime of bitterness. I raised him to live decently, not to demand a share from someone who's still alive. Marcus slammed his hand against the wall, voice breaking. You're pushing me to the edge. You want me in jail? Or do you want everyone to know you abandoned your own son? I squared my shoulders and didn't back up an inch. If I have to choose between being disliked and being used, I choose being disliked. You can shout, you can sue, but the truth doesn't change. I'm not a talking wallet anymore. A muscle twitched in his neck. Kayla sobbed, but her tone stayed wilting with a familiar sting. Then you'll die alone. You know that, right? I looked at both of them and spoke slowly, each word etched in the air. Better alone with dignity than surrounded by family I have to fear. The line dropped like a stone and dammed their rage for a few seconds. Then Marcus sprang back. You think you're safe? I'll get the court to give me guardianship. You won't be able to decide anything. I didn't answer. I turned, went inside, and brought out 2 folders. I'd prepared one with Dr. Leonard Price's signed, sealed evaluation, the other with attorney Ethan Morales' legal letter. I set them on the small porch table. Here's my cognitive assessment. Excellent. And here's the legal warning already sent to you confirming any intrusion will be prosecuted. I looked at Marcus, my voice low but precise. Do you want to try this again? They both stepped back. Wind fluttered the pages. For the first time, I saw real fear flicker in Marcus's eyes. Kayla burst into tears, hand over her face, voice choking. Mom, we just want to start over. We just need a chance. A chance only means something when you respect it, I said. If you think money can stitch up every wrong, you've forgotten the first lesson I ever taught. Tears fell, but Kayla's eyes stayed sharp. that familiar calculation still there. I understood they weren't remorseful, only cornered. Marcus lowered his head, voice rough. Do you really want to cut me off? No, I just want peace, and peace can't live beside lies. I opened the door a little wider, then pointed to the yard. Now leave. If you don't, I'm calling 911. The camera has everything, and Springfield police are 3 minutes away. They froze. Kayla looked at Marcus, then tugged his arm. Let's go. Marcus turned, but before stepping down, he threw one last line, half spite, half despair. You'll regret this. The door slammed behind them, rattling the glass. I watched through the window as their silver car shot out of the gate, a strip of dust hanging in the noon sun. I didn't cry. My shoulders just felt lighter, as if I'd finally put down a load I'd carried for years. I sat, my hand on the jasmine tea that was still warm from the morning. The scent was calm, as if the storm had never blown through this house. After a while, I called Paula. Are you free? Could you come over? Her voice was gentle, warm. I'm on my way. 10 minutes later, Paula arrived. She didn't ask much. We just looked at each other, the look of two women who've weathered many seasons. I told her the short version. She nodded, no surprise, no judgment. Then she rolled up her sleeves and went to the kitchen. Let's make lunch. For things like this, silence is sometimes the best comfort. We cooked something simple, eggs, vegetable soup, toasted bread. Not many words. The chop of the knife, the soft boil, the clink of dishes, our little symphony of peace. At the table, Paula said quietly, You know, Donna, sometimes loneliness isn't a punishment, it's a reward for people brave enough to keep themselves. I smiled and looked up at the light pouring through the window. Maybe so. Today, the sky looks bluer. We ate in quiet, but it wasn't heavy anymore. In the noon sun, I saw my face reflected in the window glass, older but steadier. In the afternoon, Paula left and I locked up behind her. Before she went, she turned and said, Change the locks for peace of mind. I nodded. By evening, the locksmith had replaced everything. When the final click sounded, it felt like closing a chapter. No more fear of a door bursting open. No more waiting for a car to stop at my gate. I tidied the living room, straightened a few frames that had tipped, then sat on the sofa. The house was hushed, the clock steady like a heartbeat. Before bed, I stepped onto the porch and looked up. A young crescent moon hung in thin clouds, softly bright. I whispered half to Frank, half to myself, They're gone, and I'm still standing. That's enough. That night I pulled up the blanket and lay down. No tossing, no jolting awake. I slept 6 hours straight, the first truly peaceful sleep in months. Outside, the wind carried jasmine through the window crack. In my dream, I sat in the garden, Frank smiling kindly, my shoulders finally loose. Peace at last. It stayed. 3 days after the professor's confrontation. With Springfield still draped in thin autumn fog, I heard a knock close to 9 in the morning. The rhythm was measured, neither harsh nor timid. I opened the door to a woman in a blue work coat, name badge gleaming, Vanessa Brooks, Social Services Department. Mrs. Donna Whitmore, I'm here to verify the guardianship petition your son filed last week. Her voice was polite and clear, without judgment. I smiled slightly and stepped aside. Yes, I figured this day would come. She removed her coat and sat in the chair by the window. Pale morning light eased across her serious but kind face. I need to confirm your cognition, financial health, and circumstances to decide whether to advance the file. I nodded. I'm prepared. I went to my desk and brought out 3 neatly organized folders. 1 Dr. Leonard Price's cognitive assessment, seal intact. 2 clean account statements, every transaction clear. 3 a journal plus a USB with recorded calls and conversations with Marcus. I set them on the table, hands steady. This is all the evidence. I have nothing to hide, but I'd like to hear your take. Vanessa opened Marcus's petition, flipped through, then looked at me. He wrote that you show memory loss, miss bill payments, and are easily deceived. He requests to protect your assets from loss. But, she lifted her head, gaze calm and keen. I reviewed the financial notes. There are suspicious transfers from your card to accounts in his name, followed by immediate withdrawals. That's not protection. That's a financial motive. I smiled, light, as someone who already knew the answer. I know. I'm not happy about it, but at least now it's on paper. She nodded and continued through my folder. When she reached the test report, she read aloud, voice clear, Cognitive performance. Excellent. No sign of cognitive decline. Then she looked up with respect. Mrs. Donna, I meet many older adults, but few prepare files as thoroughly as you. I think I understand more than the forms say. I I sat quietly while she filled out the form. Her pen moved steadily, making a soft, comforting scratch. After a moment, she spoke again, gentle and firm. I'm closing the file. Marcus's guardianship petition is denied. I'll also note that any future filing by him or anyone else will be flagged as potential financial exploitation of an elder. I exhaled and let my eyes fall shut for a second. Warmth spread through my chest, not triumph, but the safety I had waited for. Thank you, Vanessa, she smiled softly. No thanks needed. My job is to protect the truth. But a word of advice, consider a no-contact order. Even with the file closed, they might come back. I glanced out the window. Gold maple leaves fell like light rain. I know, but I still want to leave one door open for conscience. If they truly change, a mother wants a path home to exist. Vanessa nodded, clearly moved. You have a strong heart and a kind one. I hope your son realizes that soon. She signed and handed me a copy. I held the page. The bold at the bottom read, "Case closed. No guardianship approved." Only 4 words, but I felt tons lift from my shoulders. That afternoon, I scanned everything and emailed copies to Ethan Morales and Maya Patel. Ethan replied first, "Received. We'll retain the official record in our office. Congratulations, Mrs. Donna, no one can claim legal authority over you without breaking the law." Right after, Maya texted, "System updated. Account marked, protected client. Any attempt to access or add authorizations will trigger an automatic alert." I watched the computer screen, blue light reflecting off the glass beside me. Everything was clean now, clear and transparent. No gaps left for lies to slip through. Near dusk, I cleaned the house, dusted shelves, gathered scuffed mugs for washing. When I pulled the curtains, the first sunshine after weeks of dull rain poured in, lighting up the living room. Specks of dust drifted in that beam like fine glitter, weightless, shimmering. I stood for a while, hand over my chest, feeling my heartbeat slow and even. On the table, the brown leather journal still lay open from the night before. I picked up the pen and wrote one more line. Forgiveness doesn't mean handing over the wallet. Love doesn't mean enduring. And peace is never purchased with silence. When I set the pen down, one thing felt certain. I no longer feared being the bad mother. I only wanted to be a woman honest with herself. That evening, after a light meal, I opened the old wooden cabinet, the one holding the record player that had gathered dust for more than a decade. I took out Frank's favorite jazz record, Louis Armstrong, What a Wonderful World. As the first notes rose, I lit a small candle and poured a glass of red wine. The scent of wine and the saxophone line made the room feel strangely warm, as if the house itself was breathing again after a long hold. I leaned back and closed my eyes. The old music touched memories, those evenings we listened and laughed together. Frank used to say, "You know, Donna, jazz is never truly sad. There's always room for hope." I smiled. Yes, even after the darkest days, I still had hope. Hope that truth would stand and that hearts might find their way back to decency. When the clock struck 10, I gathered all the documents. Each folder, each notice, each bank record stacked neatly into the new safe I bought right after Marcus left. The old safe still sat in the corner, silent, holding only meaningless scraps, the prop of this entire journey, the place where my son's greed trapped itself. I brushed my hand across its face, a goodbye to a role now finished. "Thanks for helping me see clearly," I whispered, and turned the lock. The room was quiet, the jazz like a soft breeze. I sat on the sofa, lifted my glass, and looked out the window, moonlight threading through branches, laying a silver ribbon across the yard. Softly, almost breathless, I said, "Frank, do you see? In the end, the truth came out. Every door is now closed where it should be. And I'm still here, not older from pain, but grown from letting go." I took a small sip. The taste moved across my tongue, bitter first, then sweet, like life. I didn't write in my journal that night. I left the nightlight on, listened to the last track, and smiled. For the first time in months, I slept without checking the lock twice. Because I knew at last this house, this life, this peace had truly come back to me. After Vanessa left, the house became quiet in a strange, gentle way. No sudden phone rings, no figures hovering at the gate, no feeling of guarding every breath. The weeks that followed slid by like a flat lake, and for the first time in years, I heard the sound of peace in the absence of noise. One morning, I opened the room that used to be Marcus's. It was empty, clean in a cold way. No shirts in the closet, drawers bare, not even a scrap of paper or a note. No letter, no apology, no sign he had ever been part of this home. I stood at the threshold for a long time. The sharp ache was gone. Maybe I had passed the stage of hoping someone would return. Now I only hoped to keep my heart light enough not to hate. In the afternoon, I cleaned the room. The smell of dust, old wood, and a hint of leftover soap mixed into something both sad and soothing. I opened the window for sunlight, then decided to turn the room into a sewing corner. I hauled up Frank's old sewing machine from the basement, the one that served me for 30 years, stitching everything from wedding dresses and nightgowns to curtains. I spread a white cloth on the table, hung pale blue floral curtains, and started cutting and sewing little things: pillowcases, table runners, kitchen, aprons. I folded the leftover fabric neatly into stacks, planning to donate it at the end of the month to the church women's group for their charity gifts. When the sewing machine pedal fell into a steady rhythm, my heart settled with each stitch. The soft clatter of the machine sounded as if it were mending the part of my soul that had been torn. Paula stopped by one afternoon with good news. "Donna, I just joined a senior women's group. They meet every Thursday at the community center. They share about family, aging, and being mistreated by their own children. You should come." I smiled lightly. "You think I'd fit in with a group like that?" Paula winked. "Perfectly. Everyone there carries at least one knife wound from someone they love." I went, and strangely, that first meeting made me want to cry and also feel comforted. Some were pushed out of their homes by daughters. Some had grandkids demanding nursing home money. Some were forgotten in the very apartments they once bought for their children. But in the middle of all that bitterness, there was laughter. They didn't share to complain. They shared to remember they survived. A woman named Margaret said in a raspy but powerful voice, "We don't have to apologize for knowing how to protect ourselves." I sat quietly and wrote that down. It was a lesson that took me nearly half a life to learn, saying no without feeling the need to say sorry. After that, I practiced spending money on myself without feeling guilty. I bought a new cotton dress, light beige, soft, and well-fitting. I ordered a fresh bouquet every weekend. I went to the spa with Paula, letting someone care for the hands that had grown calloused from sewing, from mothering, from carrying everything. I realized I'd spent a lifetime nurturing others and forgot the nurturer also deserves to live. In the evenings, I kept a new habit, writing 3 lines of gratitude each day. First line, "Grateful this home still stands strong after so many storms." Second line, "Grateful these hands are still steady enough to sew, cook, and keep the peace." And the last line, "Grateful to still have a friend like Paula." Just 3 lines, but every time I finished, my heart felt a little lighter. One morning, I logged into Account B, the private account I'd kept hidden since the day I made my plan. A small line on the screen appeared. "Interest this month, $182.34. I didn't need that money for anything big. I simply smiled and murmured to myself, "Freedom has a balance now." It was a strange feeling, not the joy of being wealthy, but the confidence that even if people turn away, I can still stand on my own 2 feet. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I still dream of Marcus at 6. He's wearing the knit sweater I made, clutching an old stuffed bear, racing into my arms. He laughs, hair a mess, little voice chirping, "Mom, I did it!" I bend down and touch his cheek, warm, soft, so real. But when I open my eyes, there's only moonlight through the curtains. No laughter, no small hand, just tears already dried on the pillow. I don't try to chase the dream away. I let it come like an old guest arrive, sit a while, then leave. Because no matter what, the mother in me is still there. She's just learned that love doesn't mean hurting herself. One afternoon, I rearranged the photo shelf in the living room. Next to the picture of Frank and me, I left a small empty space. No frame, no photo. I called it a place for what hasn't been forgiven. Not to fill, not to forget. Just to remember that some wounds don't need covering, they only need time to become quiet scars. As winter approached, the community center launched a warm coats for North Springfield Drive. I sent a small donation, along with a few scarves I knit myself. I didn't sign my name, just a short note. Not to prove I'm good, just because I want to. That evening, Paula called, teasing, "Doing your quiet good deeds again, huh?" I laughed. "I'm just stitching one more warm patch onto myself." On the first windy night of winter, the gusts howled over the roof, carrying the scratch of dry leaves. Years ago, I used to curl up in fear whenever I heard wind, afraid of noises, afraid of the past knocking on my door. But tonight, I simply pulled the blanket higher and smiled in the dark. The house stood firm, the locks were strong, and so was I. Fear had moved out of this home long ago. I closed my eyes and listened to the wind like the sound of a faraway sea, gentle now, no longer harsh. In that moment, I realized I had walked through the storm without anyone having to drag me out. I wasn't looking for an apology anymore. I only wanted a full night's sleep, and I had it. The next morning, the sun rose slowly through the window, warm light spreading across the sewing room. The pieces I'd stitched yesterday still lay on the table, tidy, aligned, so neat they made me smile. I brewed tea, watched the steam curl, and told myself quietly, the scar doesn't hurt anymore. It just reminds me I survived. Then I turned on the radio. The old jazz drifted in again, soft and familiar. I sewed a few more lines and let the light pour through the curtains, laying its gentle glow across everything like a warm quilt for a woman finally learning to love herself after so many years. One Saturday morning, Springfield's sky turned a rare clear blue after days of rain. I carried my straw tote, put on a wide-brim hat, and walked to the weekend farmer's market at the corner of Main Street. For years, this was my routine with Frank. He liked raw honey. I liked picking apples by the season. Today, he wasn't here, but I still went. A small way to remind myself that life continues through small things. Vendors I knew called out, voices mixing with the smell of baked goods and dried lavender. I strolled slowly, filled my lungs with the freshness of produce, and felt peace spread through me. Then a silhouette in the crowd made me pause. Marcus. I knew him instantly, even changed thinner, eyes sunken, but still my son. Kayla stood next to him with a brand new designer bag, makeup flawless. They were at the coffee stall. She smiled at the barista while Marcus stared at his phone. Our eyes met for exactly half a second. That was enough to stir a lifetime of memories. Then they turned away quickly, awkwardly, like I was just a stranger passing by. I didn't avoid them. I didn't call out. I kept walking to the fruit stand as if nothing had happened. The vendor asked, Mrs. Donna, which apples today? I smiled. Honeycrisp, the kind that's sweet and crisp like early autumn sun. I picked them one by one, paid, and tucked them into my tote. I didn't look back. I didn't hope they'd follow. I only heard Kayla's heels fade away, mixed with someone's forced laughter. And for me, only an easy quiet remained. On the way home, Paula called. I heard you ran into Marcus at the market. I chuckled softly. Springfield's too small for secrets to last. How did they look? Still going, seems fine. Kayla had a new bag. Paula sighed. Maybe they borrowed again. You know how it is, people who don't learn the lesson repeat it. I was quiet a few seconds, then said, it's okay. If the lesson hasn't arrived, people will find ways to delay it. But a mother can't keep being the soft mattress they fall on. The wind hummed on the line, then Paula's gentle voice. You're strong, Donna. No, I'm just tired, I said. That afternoon, while I was watering flowers on the porch, I noticed a familiar car stop about 2 blocks away. Silver, with a license plate I knew. Marcus's old sedan. It never came closer, just sat there for a few minutes. In the window's reflection, I saw a figure likely. Marcus turned toward my house. I deliberately turned my back and kept watering the pots of yellow mums along the fence. Water trickled and shimmered in the late sun. I didn't want to pretend I hadn't seen, but I also wasn't going to run over. If someone wants to come back, they need to knock on the door themselves. When I set the hose down, the car was gone. No sound, no greeting, only a puff of dust that faded in the pale light. That evening, there was a tan envelope in the mailbox. No return address, just my name in print. I opened it. Inside was $300 in cash and a small folded note with a single line, thank you. No signature, no explanation, no apology. But I knew that handwriting Marcus's slight slant, the heavy hand at the end of the 10. I stood on the porch holding the paper for a long time. No surge of emotion, no anger, just a quiet, gentle sadness, like looking at a healed scar and remembering it once hurt but doesn't sting anymore. I folded the note and the envelope and put them in the bottom drawer of the wooden cabinet, the place I keep things from the past, old photos, Frank's wedding ring, and a few lines from my son's childhood letters. Not to treasure as something beautiful, but as proof of an apology clarity that never quite formed. That night, I sat at my desk and opened the thick brown leather journal. I wrote, "I choose peace, not bitterness. Maybe forgiveness doesn't need an audience, only my own lighter heart. If anyone who left in a storm ever returns, they'll find this house still lit, not to welcome them in, but to light my own way." I closed the journal and turned off the desk lamp, leaving only a soft glow on Frank's photo. His kind smile seemed to say, "You did the right thing." The next day was colder. I got up early and baked a batch of banana bread, the one Mrs. Alvarez, my neighbor across the street, always praises. The warm, sweet smell filled the kitchen like a memory. I cut a portion, packed it in a box, and walked it over to her house. She opened the door, surprised. "Donna, is everything all right?" I smiled and handed her the box. "Nothing's wrong. I just want to thank you. If you hadn't texted me that night, things might not have turned out this way." She was moved and squeezed my hand. "Oh, honey, I only did what anyone should do. But not everyone dares." We sat in her small living room with mint tea and talked about gardens. Neither of us mentioned Marcus or the past. Sometimes, between women, silence is the most complete thank you. When I came home that afternoon, the yellow mums on the porch were starting to burst open. Sunlight slid across each petal, shimmering like golden thread stitching torn pieces of a life back together. I sat on the steps and looked at the street, the place where every passing breeze carries a bit of the past and then dissolves into nothing. No one knew what I was thinking, maybe remembering, maybe letting go. But I understood I'd chosen the right path. No bitterness, no revenge, just peace. I breathed in the mum's scent and spoke softly to the wind. "Marcus, I'm not angry anymore. But if you ever truly want to come back, knock with clean hands. I still have room in my heart, just not the old room." The wind rustled the leaves like an answer. I smiled, stood up, and went inside. In the sewing room, the last light of day lay over the old machine, the fabric stacks, and the frames. Everything was quiet, whole. I turned on the radio. What a wonderful world floated in again. I didn't cry. I didn't regret. Some meetings aren't meant to reconnect. They're meant to show you're strong enough to smile when the past walks by. By January, Springfield slipped into a bright, cool, winter-clear light, not harsh, enough to see small changes others might miss. I had changed for one. I slept deeper, my skin looked rosier, and every morning I woke up feeling like I was living, not just existing. At my follow-up, Dr. Price took my blood pressure and smiled. "Excellent. As steady as someone 45. I laughed. "Maybe because I'm no longer worried about my wallet getting visited." He chuckled too, resting a hand on my shoulder. "It's not just health, Donna. When the heart is calm, the body heals itself." I left the clinic with a light step. Maybe after all these years, I finally understood what Frank used to say. Freedom is a kind of tonic too, Donna. Starting in early February, I opened a small free sewing class for 5 older friends in the neighborhood. They were women like me, plenty of loss behind them, once convinced old age was an ending, not a beginning. For the first session, I brewed tea, set out cookies, and opened the kitchen doors wide so the sun could pour in. Frank's old machine shone, polished and cheerful. "Don't be afraid of a crooked stitch. Let your hands lead you," I said, guiding. Mrs. Ruth, as she wrestled with a hem, laughter filled the room after that. Everyone made mistakes. Someone cracked a joke, and we laughed until we cried. "Mrs.," Helen said, "I can't remember the last time I laughed this hard." As I watched them, I realized the kitchen that had once echoed with arguments was now brimming with joy. We met twice a week. They learned to make napkins, tote bags, even robes. I taught them even stitches. They taught me how to laugh for no reason. Just like that, my kitchen became a place where worn-out hearts could be brought back to life, mine included. In early March, I treated myself to a short trip. Not far, just a bus ride to the southern coast. I sat by the window with a small canvas tote, listening as the bus rolled past long fields. The beach was calm, the air was salty, the waves gentle. I sat on an old wooden bench and watched gulls flutter against a gray-white sky. No one knew who I was. No one asked where I came from. I didn't have to think about accounts, savings, or old wounds. I just sat there, listening to waves instead of the heaviness in my chest. At dusk, I ate a simple seaside dinner, grilled fish, fresh greens, and a small glass of wine. The young server said, "You look so radiant traveling alone." I smiled. "Freedom is the best makeup a woman can wear." She laughed and nodded. I should learn that. I rode home on the last bus, cool night air drifting through the window. I leaned my head back and thought, freedom doesn't arrive in a single moment. It comes when you get used to your own quiet. Back in Springfield, I went to attorney Ethan Morales' office to redo my will. I told him, I don't want my assets to be a reason for anyone to fight anymore. I want them to be useful. I gave a portion to a local women's vocational fund so people like me can learn sewing, cooking, and earn with their own hands. For the rest, Ethan set up a trust fund that protects my assets, so I still have full control, but no one else can touch them. He read the draft and nodded. Mrs. Donna, this is one of the wisest plans I've seen. Most people build a trust to protect assets from others. You're doing it to protect your peace. I smiled. Also, to avoid another war. A few weeks later, Springfield Credit Union invited me to enroll in their Elder Fraud Prevention Program. Maya Patel greeted me at the counter, her smile as gentle as the first time we met. We're rolling out a new program. The system will automatically detect unusual transactions from senior accounts and send direct alerts. I nodded. Sign me up, Maya. I'm all for it. Not everyone is as fortunate as I am. She squeezed my hand. Mrs. Donna, what you went through taught us a lot. You didn't just protect yourself, you helped others see they deserve safety. When I walked out, the sky was still clear. I stood for a moment under the bright silver sign catching sunlight, feeling as if I'd closed a very long chapter and opened another, the chapter of doing something about it. That evening, I sat down to write a letter to the local government, proposing a flyer campaign on preventing financial abuse of older adults. I told my story briefly, no Marcus, no tears, just the truth, enough for readers to understand that sometimes the harm comes from those we loved. I ended with one line, no one is too old to learn how to protect themselves. Give them the tools, and they'll reclaim their dignity. I signed, sent it, and felt a simple joy like finishing a straight, beautiful stitch. One night, while making tea, my phone rang. The screen showed an unknown number with 4 words. Mom, are you well? No name, no photo, but I knew who it was. I set the cup down and looked at the words for a long time. No anger, no swell of emotion, just calm. I didn't delete it, and I didn't reply. I set a reminder in my phone. Think about it tomorrow. Tomorrow, not because I was wavering, but because I'd learned some answers should come only when the heart is truly ready. That night, I lit a cinnamon cedar candle, the scent Frank loved. The flame danced on the picture frame, spreading a gentle warmth. I played his favorite Blue Moon and sat quietly on the sofa. Hey, I whispered. I saved myself. No one had to pull me out, and I didn't need anyone's pity. I just needed to know I still had the courage to begin again. The music faded. Only the soft crackle of the candle remained, like a small clock measuring the time of a life finally at peace. Before bed, I opened my laptop and ordered a new set of sheets, cream white with small leaf patterns. Not expensive, not fancy, but I smiled as I clicked confirm order. Not because I needed something new, but because I wanted to give a gift to the woman who survived the storm. The next morning, I finished embroidering a small frame with pale gold thread for Paula on it. I stitched in steady, firm lines, freedom sewn by my own hands. When I handed it to her, Paula hugged me tight. That line belongs on the wall at the community center. I smiled, eyes a little wet. It doesn't need to. It's enough to hang it in the heart. Late in the afternoon, I watered the flowers on the porch. The sun poured down gold. The mums swayed in the breeze, glinting like tinsel. I lifted my face to the clear sky and felt my heart just as clear. Freedom, it turns out, it isn't loud or fierce. It's simply when you no longer need permission from anyone to be at peace. And when peace becomes a habit, I know I've truly returned to being Donna, an ordinary but strong woman who learned to stitch her life back together with her own hands. In April, Springfield slipped into a season of light winds. The trees along the streets trembled in the sun, so calm I thought nothing new could possibly happen. Until one morning, when I opened my email and saw the sender's name, Marcus Whitfield. The first time in almost almost 8 months, I sat still for a long while in front of the screen and read the first line. Mom, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking for one meeting, no money, no agenda. The email was nearly 2 pages long. Marcus wrote about losing his job, Kayla leaving for a while, credit card debt piling up, and the feeling of being seen as a scammer wherever I go. He wrote, I read the flyers you used to send about preventing financial abuse. I get it now. I used to be the example in those. I'm ashamed. I read to the end and stopped at the sentence. I'm not asking for money, just a chance to meet once and speak honestly, without excuses. I gently closed the laptop. Sunlight spilled across the wooden table, reflecting off Frank's picture frame with a tender glow. I whispered, maybe it's time, Frank, not to forgive everything, but to know I'm not afraid anymore. 2 days later, I chose a small morning cafe on Maple Street near the main square. It was quiet, with a corner table by the window where the early light slanted in like a thin shawl laid over the air. I arrived 10 minutes early, wearing a beige knit coat, my hair neatly tied back. Attorney Ethan Morales sat at the table behind me, pretending to read the paper, but I knew he was there, as a precaution. Not because I feared Marcus would do something foolish, but because I had promised myself. Family no longer means letting down my guard. When Marcus walked in, I recognized him at once, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes hollow, an old suit no longer crisp. Kayla came with him, quiet, with little makeup, her gaze cautious. We sat down. For a moment, no one spoke, just the sound of spoons stirring coffee. Marcus began, I'm ashamed, Mom. I looked at him, steady. Shame is the first step. The next step has to be responsibility. He lowered his head, voice tight. I understand. I'm working with a debt management center, and I promise I'll pay things down. I just want you to know I've changed. Kayla stayed silent, eyes wet, and whispered, I'm in therapy too. I know I was too greedy. I set my teacup down and spoke evenly. Honesty is a good start, but if it stops there, everything repeats. So today I have 3 conditions. I took a paper from my bag. First, no borrowing, no asking, not even $1. Second, continue therapy and debt management with monthly verification. Third, every contact with me must be respectful, and by appointment no showing up unannounced. Marcus nodded, lips pressed tight. I looked straight into his eyes. You don't have to promise to love me. You just have to respect me as a person, he cried, and Kayla lowered her head. I took a photocopied packet from my bag. Inside was the guide to preventing financial abuse of older adults, the same one I had sent to the authorities. I slid it toward them. This is my gift to you both. Read it carefully. Not to remember guilt, but to learn how not to repeat yourselves. Marcus looked at the cover, then up at me, and asked softly, I'm not asking for money, but can I hug you? I was quiet for a few seconds. Then I nodded. Marcus stood, walked slowly over, and put his arms around my shoulders. I let him, but my left hand stayed on my bag. Not out of fear, but because this was a boundary I chose to keep. The door can be open, but the wallet stays locked. After they left, I sat a few more minutes, watching my tea grow cold. Ethan came over and asked quietly, You okay, Donna? I nodded. I am. I don't know if they'll stay sincere, but at least today, my hands didn't shake when I looked my son in the eyes. Ethan smiled. Sometimes justice is simply standing steady without needing to beat anyone, I answered. Maybe so. That afternoon, I went home and opened my computer. I created a new Lounge email folder and named it Maybe Not Yet. I moved Marcus's email into it, no deleting, no reply. Because forgiveness isn't erasing. It's putting things where they belong so they don't take up any more room in your heart. I went to the kitchen and started a pot of chicken and potato soup, the kind I always make when I need to comfort myself. The smell of onions browning drifted through the house, mingling with the hint of cinnamon from the candle on the shelf. I turned on the radio. Moon River came on soft, distant warm like Frank's voice once was. I opened the window to let in the wind and light. The afternoon sun spread across the table and lit up the little card on the wall, Freedom sewn by my own hands. I smiled to myself. There was no longer any scent of fear in this house, only cinnamon, pastry, and the fragrance of peace. That night, I sat at my desk and opened the brown leather notebook that has followed me a long way. On the last page, I wrote the closing line, "Freedom isn't an accident, it is the discipline of self-respect." I set the pen down and closed the notebook, my heart light like a thread after the final stitch. Outside, a new moon peeked through the window, its gentle glow washing the room. I stood, drew the curtains, and looked out at the quiet street, the same street where fear used to pass by, now holding only steady footsteps. I don't know whether Marcus will truly change. Maybe one day he'll call again, or maybe he'll stay silent forever. But for the first time, I feel that whatever happens, I'll be okay. I don't need a perfect apology, and I don't need the past to be patched. I just need to know I kept what matters most, my self-respect, and the peace no one can buy. I set my teacup down, watched the steam rise, and thought to myself, freedom, it turns out, has a scent, the warmth of cinnamon, the light of morning, and the fragrance of someone who saved herself without hating anyone. Thank you truly for staying with me to this very moment. If you're hearing this story on a quiet evening, or with the tick of a kitchen clock in a small house, please know you are not alone. All of us, at some point, have to learn how to let go of what once hurt us to find our way back to ourselves. I don't know which city you're in. Tell me below, in the comments. Who knows, maybe I'm telling this story from somewhere not so far from you, only a few heartbeats away. If my story touched you, please hit like, subscribe, or simply leave a note so I know there's still someone out there listening to people like us. Thank you for being here, for still believing in kindness, in resilience, and in that small light called hope.